It's 10 a.m. in Lagos, Nigeria. Welcome to the midweek edition of Business Morning here on Channels Television. Good morning, I'm Ini John Mekwa. Let's get into business. Oil prices rose on Wednesday after plunging more than 2% in the previous session as reports of falling U.S. crude oil and fuel inventories refocus investors on robust demand in the world's top oil consumer. Brent crude climbed 30 cents, that's 0.4%, to $81.07 a barrel. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures also gained 39 cents, that's 0.5%, to $77.46 a barrel. U.S. crude oil stocks fell by 6.1 million barrels in the week ended the 21st of April. That's according to market sources citing American Petroleum Institute figures on Tuesday. Analysts had expected crude inventories to fall by 1.5 million barrels. Gasoline inventories fell 1.9 million barrels last week, while distillate inventories rose 1.7 million barrels. And official stockpiles data from the U.S. government is due out later on today. Oil prices dived more than 2% on Tuesday, returning to near same level before OPEC and other producers, that's OPEC Plus, because it includes Russia, announced an additional output reduction in early April. The upward momentum brought by OPEC cuts is running out, and Russian oil exports did not show any obvious decrease, leaving the supply side with no further supports. Commodities now. Chicago wheat rose for the first time in 6 sessions on Wednesday, recovering from its lowest in 21 months on bargain buying, but forecasts of rains in parched U.S. plains limited gains. Expectations of rains across U.S. plains next week could improve the winter crop, which has been hit by a severe drought. Wheat dropped to its lowest since July 2021 at $6.42 for half a bushel on Tuesday. Discussions over the Black Sea grain deal continued to center stage in agricultural markets. Russian Foreign Minister on Tuesday has said that the situation related to the Black Sea grain deal had reached a deadlock, adding there will still be obstacles blocking Russian exports. Meanwhile, Ukrainian official had said a UN proposal in improving and extending the deal can succeed only if the international community collectively pressures Russia. Russia is expected to harvest a large wheat crop this year, though well below a record volume in 2022, while the EU crop conditions remain favorable, apart from a drought-hit Spain and northern Italy. Yesterday at the NGX, leading Pan-African banking group Ecobank introduced its new group chief executive officer, Jeremy Awori, to the markets during his visit to the Nigerian exchange. Leading a delegation from the group's board, Mr. Awori met with the chief executive officer of the NGX, Mr. Temikukwala, and joined stockbrokers to ring the gong, signaling the close of the day's trading session. As a company listed on the NGX, the ETI says it will continue to deliver value to shareholders while remaining accountable to their depositors.
Executives of Ecobank Group joined brokers at the Nigerian Exchange Limited for a symbolic event marking the end of trading for the day. The bank says the visit to the trading floor is another important milestone towards the group's continued objectives of increasing shareholders' value. The newly announced Group Chief Executive Officer, Jeremy Awori, says participating in the closing gong ceremony at the Nigerian Exchange is a great honor for him and the bank.
It's indeed our honor to be here with you today.
He goes ahead to do the honors.
Like Eurobonds, putting Nigerian corporates on the map. They're listing in our market, they're listing in a few other African markets. They're doing a lot in sustainability, and even the way they drive the bank strategy, very in line with what we would expect of responsible and sustainable companies at the exchange. So we applaud and welcome that very much.
The thrust of what we do is to try and increase our contribution to the group's earnings, and we believe that we're very well positioned to contribute significantly to the Nigerian market.
The bank's executives speak on the huge potentials of the African market, the enormous opportunities it presents, and the bank's strategy to achieve its targets.
First is we've got banking operations in 33 countries, right? So we've got the biggest spread of any bank on the continent, and that gives us a unique position and a unique advantage. We've got a very strong technological platform that allows us to take banking services very quickly and very deeply into many markets, and Nigeria is no exception, where we've got a lot of customers here. So what are we looking for? We're looking to grow our business. We're looking to provide financial services not just to retail customers but also to SME and to corporate clients. When we talk about SMEs, we see a huge opportunity around the technology space, whether it's fintech, agri-tech, health tech.
What we plan to do is to ensure that we open accounts and wallets for over 100 million Nigerians and Africans over the next 5 years. So with digital onboarding, you can easily achieve that. So the idea is to go digital to enable people to onboard without even coming into the branch.
The shares of Ecobank Transnational Incorporated, parent company of the Ecobank Group, are traded on 3 stock exchanges, the NGX, the Ghana Stock Exchange in Accra, Ghana, and in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire. The bank says it is determined to double down efforts to support the growth of Ecobank Nigeria, a core business for the Ecobank Group.
All right, now let's have our first conversation today. There are changes made to the terminologies that define Nigeria's labor force, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. The NBS says that this is necessary because of limitations of unemployment statistics, and also to provide broader measures of labor underutilization as response to emerging social and economic information needs, among others. Now, let's understand more about these changes with Mr. Paul Alaje, senior economist and partner with SPM Professionals. He joins us here in the studio. Mr. Alaje, good to have you. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you so very much for having me.
Thank you for coming. Well, this changes to the definition of employment, unemployment, and all of that. How often is it done globally? What's the ideal?
Well, in 2015, something like this happened under the Statistician General, Yemi Kale. It used to be 40 hours a week, and Yemi Kale and his team reviewed it to 20 hours a week. In fact, ILO had put Yemi Kale under pressure at the time and say it should be 1 hour a week. And he gave a reason why Nigeria should not adopt 1 hour a week, because at that time, if Nigeria had adopted 1 hour a week, even though unemployment at that time was 23.5%, but Yemi Kale had mentioned that if we were to adopt 1 hour a week, unemployment will reduce significantly to 2 to 3%. So the question is, if you go on the street of Lagos, on the street of Abuja, Kano, Port Harcourt, wherever you may be watching us from today, would you agree with the number that Nigeria's unemployment figure is 2% or 3%? Even as an unemployed person, we're saying just 2% of you.
Okay, Mr. Alaje, just before we get ahead of ourselves, because I know some of our viewers may not know these changes, so let's just state it out. So before now, the working population used to be individuals between the age of 15 and 64.
Yes.
But now, it's just anybody above 15 years.
Yes.
There's no limits. I believe that's part of it.
So it's part of the review. So let me take us through what we call the labor force, and also why we have unemployment, and look at the age distribution. Before now, when we talk of the population is measured by the National Population Commission. And if you check IMF website, if you check the website of that agency, among many others, everybody agreed that Nigerian population is above 215 million people. But let's be charitable and say we are just 210 million people. We are just being charitable to allow for error margin or whatever gap. So that on one side. The National Bureau of Statistics says that our labor force is less than 70 million people. What is the meaning? Labor force are people that are willing and able to work. It does not necessarily mean that they are working. So we have another group of people, 140 million people, who are either too young to work or above 64 or up to 65 who are too old to work. So you need to remove all of those. So when you remove them and people are not willing to work anyways, then you have just 70 million people, even though the number as we speak today is not up to 70 million people. Of that number, we now have about 40% of that total number of the 70 million people unemployed. So when you remove 70%, approximately 25 million, add it to 140 million, then you have 165 million people. The implication is that you have only 45 million people that are actively engaged in minimum of 20 hours job. a week. That is what the data is saying. But now
that is the former.
That is the format we were using
exactly.
up till the recent review that the Bureau of Statistics, that the Bureau of Statistics and Ministry of Labor and Productivity came up with. Now there is a lot of difference happening now. First, you have to be above 15 to ad infinitum. Once you can work, even if you are 100 years old, then you still be classified as part of the labor force. And there is a lot of worry because even federal government policy, once you are above 60 years, would you still be able to, are you still supposed to work, even though you might be working, but officially, are you still captured? Even as a lecturer, there is still a benchmark. So when we say that there is no benchmark, we are saying whether you are young or old, work. So that's fine. But the real thing for me is that before 2015, we were using 40 hours a week. At 2015, we reviewed it to 20 hours a week. As if that were not enough. In 2023, we're saying we want to align with whether World Bank or ILO to review our work duration, minimum work requirement to be classified as employed to 1 hour a week. What does it mean? If somebody helps me to fetch water in areas where there are no water, and you just push a wheelbarrow for 1 hour, and that's the only thing you have done for that week, and I pay you for that labor you have done, then are we saying that person is truly employed or is underemployed? These are questions that I think Bureau of Statistics we need to answer in the coming period.
So before now, that category of individual would be classed under underemployed,
yes.
But now they're being captured into employed.
So you're going to see the next the figure. The figure will certainly reduce to single digits. But I'm worried if.
So sorry, because I understand, but there's so many people who are watching. We need to carry them along. So what it means is that because we have enlarged the brackets of employed, that means the percentage of our unemployment is going to reduce drastically. So telling the world that Nigeria has little or no problem when it comes to employment.
That's exactly what we'll be doing. So unlike if we are told the world that we have huge unemployment, people who want to do business might come to Nigeria expecting to have relatively cheaper labor. But when we tell them that we have huge employment, they will believe that because the supply side is small, then price of labor will be very high. They may be discouraged from coming. So I'm not sure Bureau of Statistics have thought this through, especially the Ministry of Labor and Productivity. Because when you look at report that we have seen in the media, the Ministry of Labor and Productivity, and I think the minister particularly, is putting the Bureau under pressure to adopt what ILO is doing. And you will see under the former Secretary General, the minister had mentioned that he has criticized what the figure coming from that agency of government as not aligned with World Bank. And I even alleged that World Bank had criticized the National Bureau of Statistics. But of course, National Bureau of Statistics has said, no, our figure has been accepted. There will be no time World Bank has criticized what we are doing. But what Nigeria should expect in the coming period is that the Bureau of Statistics had said is going to adopt 1 hour a week criteria. Unfortunately, that would mean that many people who are not really doing something significant will now be said to be employed. So prediction, we'll be looking at less than 10% unemployment figure. But should we be planning on less than 10%? Does it mean that Nigeria are truly employed? Unlike countries who you see when you say they have 6% unemployment figure and government is still doing so much to improve employment. But in the case of Nigeria, when you say that your unemployment is single digit, what does it mean? People who are able, and I think that if this is what ILO is saying, ILO is actually not helping African countries, unlike in the environment where there are support systems for people who may not be working up to 1 hour. You know, I remember an argument President Buhari made many years ago when he said the cost of PMS in Saudi Arabia cannot be higher than the cost of PMS in Nigeria, and on that basis, he wants to shift the price a little forward. I said, Mr. President, hold a minute, because you have not told us the minimum wage in Saudi Arabia, because purchase of PMS is a function of income. If I don't earn, then how do I buy? So you need to also increase the minimum wage and ensure that productivity has increased in Nigeria for you to now compare us on one leg with Saudi Arabia. And this is the thing. So if you say this National Bureau of Statistics, to me, I have serious concern regarding what the National Bureau of Statistics want to adopt. Even if you want to compare Nigeria with some countries countries. You also need to compare our environment. You also need to compare the ease with which we can get job in Nigeria before you can say you want to move Nigeria from the 20 hours a week criteria to 1 hour. I don't know how to swallow that. It's
you know, Mr. Alaje, the example you gave, I think, just leaves a picture in my mind that if you engage someone to help you fetch water, and the person, maybe because, you know, areas where there are no water in the house, so fetch water for 1 hour, then you classify that person as an employed.
Yes,
I mean,
and it's just going to do that once a week. All it needs to do that
is just 1 hour in a week.
This is the contradiction. If minimum wage is 30,000 a month, if you fetch 4 times once a week, 4 times, would that 1 hour job be equivalent of minimum wage? Questions that agencies of government need to respond to before we blindly accept what is being forced down our throat.
Yeah, well, we're out of time now, but I mean, this also is another question, you know, even when we have inflation figures, a lot of people question the reality. How much reality does that inflation figure, which of course is coming from the MBS, how much of the reality does it capture? So this is another of such questions.
What we need to know about inflation is that if your salary was 250,000 naira on the 1st of January 2021, just hold on, by December 31st, 2023, your salary still 250,000, but what you'll be taking home in real sense, in economic terms, is just 100,000. And you know what? The invisible force has taken 150 value from your pocket. So even though people have concern, I've seen international organizations said Nigeria inflation is certainly higher than that. Even what we have is still in average of 20% of our wealth in our pocket. So what I think government should do so that we don't criticize and not bring solution: jobs, manufacturing, productivity, production, mechanized farming is what we should do. I've said on this show before, we have 40 million pupils. Can we revive or, bring back the textile sector? Kaduna used to be known for that, and I think we still have the capacity to go back into textile. Make school uniform that Nigerians will use by Nigerians to be sewn by Nigeria. What we are doing now is just to sew by Nigerian tailors, but we need to actually make those school uniforms, those fabric, we need to make them in Nigeria. It is when you create jobs that we can say that unemployment truly has reduced, not by changing the goalposts in the middle of the game. And you know, if it is Arsenal, their fans will really not support us.
Mr. Alaje, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you so very much for having me.
All right, well, certainly the MBS might need to speak to some economists and look at the implication of adopting this ILO recommendation of 1 hour for a week being termed employment in the country. But let's move on now. Today is World Intellectual Property Day. It's a day celebrated globally, and Nigeria obviously is joining in to celebrate this as a country in the world. And we see that it's on the 26th of April of every year. Events are organized to mark the day to seek and inform people about the role of intellectual property, and then of course issues around copyright, trademarks act, patents and designs, and all of that. For this year, 2023, the focus is women and IP, accelerating innovation and creativity, celebrating the can-do attitude of women inventors, creators, and entrepreneurs around the world and their groundbreaking work. Well, let's get to this now. We're going to have 2 women discuss this with us. Let's start virtually with Chioma Ogbonna, the founder of a songwriting community of Nigeria. She joins us virtually now to discuss this. Hi, Chioma, happy World IP Day, I guess, as we say. How are you celebrating it?
Well, I am here to have this conversation. I guess that is how I'm celebrating it today. How are you doing?
I'm fine, Chioma. So, is this really being celebrated in Nigeria, or are we just joining the chorus? I mean, how real is it to Nigerians, the issue of intellectual property protection? How real is it in the everyday running? You're a songwriter, you deal with a lot of creative that need to be protected. How real is it in your circle of work?
I'd say it's actually very real, because as creatives, we tend to trivialize the work that we do. and because in quotes it seems easy. It's not like you have to pay for the creative process. Like to create a song, you literally just sit in your room and you write a song and it exists. It's not like unlike landed property and other kinds of assets that you have to buy. It's just creating. So somehow there is the temptation to want to trivialize it, but really we actually take the issues of copyright protection very seriously, because how we succeed as songwriters is hinged on that. So yeah, take it pretty seriously.
In the studio here, Chinyere Okorocha, the pioneer chairperson of the IP committee of the NBA SBL and a sterling member of the Nigerian intellectual property community. Good to have you in the studio. Good morning.
Thank you for having me. And
great.
Nice to be here.
So, thank you. So, how knowledgeable are Nigerians about their rights when it comes to copyright, patents, and all those kind of intellectual properties?
Okay, so intellectual property obviously is the area of the law that deals with creations of the mind. And I think the ones that people know the most are the copyright, which deals with, okay, the singers, the musicians, the playwrights, movies and all that. That's copyright. But there are other types of IP, that is trademarks, that are the brand names, the names of products, goods and services you see around. The patents, which are inventions, which can include medicines, the engine of your phone, your iPad, and all that. Those are inventions that help human endeavors. And then you have industrial designs and then trade secrets. So you think that everybody is aware, but the awareness level is not where we want it to be. So once we're aware that these things exist and that you shouldn't copy or counterfeit other people's inventions, it still goes on. It's very rampant in the third world countries, and so we have to have laws in place that protect people's creativity and innovation so that they can take economic benefit from anything they create.
And I hear this is a form of discouragement for SMEs, because, I mean, in Nigeria, you have a lot of innovative and creative individuals. So people have this idea, and before you know it, it's everywhere. How much of a problem is it? We see that globally, the intellectual property right market is worth about $8.2 billion. And here in Nigeria, I don't know if we scratched the surface of that market.
Okay, so I think internationally their markets are saturated. So that makes the third world countries like Nigeria, in quotes, a good ground for investment for companies, you understand. And then our creative industry is in its infancy stages, really. So we have a lot of inventions and creations. And in the past, we lost them to the international community. So I'll give you an example. The yam pounder is allegedly created, or was, yes, created by a Nigerian. But someone from the Western world took it, went back to his country, registered the patent, and then sold it back to us. So it's a big problem. A lot of people don't know that you can actually have economic benefit from whatever it is you create. So in relation to your question about SMEs, yes, people have ideas, they're creative, they create something, but counterfeiting is very rampant. And so the advice that we usually give is, no matter how small your invention is or how small your business is, seek proper legal advice to protect yourself. Because in Nigeria, we do have laws that can help you protect your intellectual property assets. Either it's, in fact, there's a new Copyright Act, 2022. We're so happy it was signed into law recently, which even expands the type of protection you can have for your creations to include this digital world that we're all in. There are quite a few innovative steps in this new act, although some of the other intellectual property acts or the legislations are outdated. For example, the trademark one is the Act of 1967, and our Patent and Design Act is 1970. But we're very happy that at least the Copyright Act is up to date. 2022, so that's not bad at all. So the will is there. It takes organizations like the Section on Business Law of the Nigerian Bar Association to continue to do advocacy, to sensitize the public as to the need to protect your innovations, explaining what intellectual property is. You know, Nigeria has a robust system, even though execution is always a problem. You know, so I was the inaugural chairperson of the Intellectual Property Committee under the Section on Business Law of the Nigerian Bar Association. And during my tenure, as well as, you know, subsequent administrations, we're constantly holding programs to sensitize the public on their IP rights. We also hold trainings for judges.
But I hear you guys charge too much. So this protection could cost more than 600,000. I mean, where would a young individual who just has a creative idea get more than 600,000 to pay for this protection? Perhaps that's why they leave it lying just there.
I don't know where you got your statistics from. I don't think to register, for example, a trademark or a patent or a design or even copyright is 600,000, you know.
How much is it then?
I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head.
Because I did some finding, because that's what I got. So I will happily be corrected.
So the question is, why is it that it's only when it comes to payment for legal services that we kind of now remember that something is expensive? I can tell you, trying to get your intellectual property back from somebody who has stolen it, or you know, to defend a case of infringement, is far more costly than what it will cost you to register in the first place. There's so many cases that we have where you only come to us after the fact. You understand? In which case, you're going to end up paying more than if you had registered and protected your intellectual property ab initio, or from the scratch. That's what that means, you know. So let's protect the things that are important. Let's make sacrifices. That's what I tell young business owners, you know, particularly women, because this year, the World Intellectual Property Day, the theme is about women and IP, you know, and all that, you know, so we're bringing women to the forefront. Yeah. And women are already disadvantaged, you know, by reason of the mere fact that you're a woman, you don't have the right access, the same access to resources as our male folk. Have you ever tried to get a loan from a bank as a woman or a young entrepreneur? You know, so you have to take steps to protect your intellectual property. Okay. It's one of the things you need to budget for in your business.
Okay. You still didn't tell me how much. But let's not forget Choma. Choma is there. Talking about young entrepreneurs. Choma, a songwriter. We've had some cases of some artists, you know, suing the other because they use their tunes, use some of their lines, lyrics in the song. And so can we say that in your space, you are more enlightened, as members of your community are more enlightened and are more protective of their intellectual properties?
Yeah, I would say that we do a lot to educate members of my community, because we know that the fact that you have an idea does not automatically protect the idea itself. You actually have to take steps to put it into a fixed format. You also have to take steps to make sure that you protect it. So being a songwriter and being in our community means that you have to learn all the requirements of protecting your song. So that is something that we really take very serious in our community.
So how much legal services do you engage? Because, I mean, you did hear Mr. Korecha talking about getting the legal protection from the scratch and not waiting until there's a happenstance.
Yeah, so we one of the things we try to do is to actually have lawyers amongst us. I have a legal background, like apart from like the fact that I'm a songwriter, like I studied law. So most times people come to me and have questions about, oh, so what do I need to do? I just have this song that I wrote. Somebody wants me to write a song. I'm going for a songwriting camp. So we also have other lawyers that actually practice in our community that give legal advice, so that you know exactly what to do, how to track your contribution in a songwriting process. For example, in a camp where there are many other songwriters, and you don't want your idea to be lost in the bulk of ideas that are being thrown around. You also want to ensure that if you contributed, you are able to specifically say, this is what I contributed to this song, and this is the percentage that I will get in terms of the split from that song that is written. So these are things that we ensure that people pay attention to. You don't just say, oh, because you are a creative, you get into a space and you just pour your heart out and you say it's passion. You have to also consider the legal implications of those contributions that you make in every room and at every point in time.
All right, Chioma Ogbonna, the founder of Songwriting Community of Nigeria. Thank you so much for your time, and once again, happy World IP Day.
Same to you. Thank you so much.
All right, we also have to thank you so much, Chinyere Okorocha, pioneer chairperson of IP Committee in the MBA SBL, and also a sterling member of the intellectual property community. Thank you so much for your time this morning, and also happy IP Day.
Happy World IP Day.
Yeah,
thank you for having me.
All right, let's take a break now. When we come back, it'll be Commodities time with Afex right after this. Yes, it's Afex time now. Let's do a little bit of market summary before we delve into the conversation for the day. In the last trading week, which ended on the 24th of April, we did see strong performances across key indicators, according to the data from Afex. Turnover increased by 69.23%. That's going from 5.72 billion naira to 9.68 billion naira. We also saw an increase of 47.36% in the volume of contracts traded. We witnessed an increase in the number of deals by 19.15%, closing at 112. That's for the number of deals. The Afex Commodity Index rose by 1.85%, closing the week at 480.15 index point. The Afex Exports Index performed positively also, rising to 225.82 points. That went from 220.99 points. Now, the volume of contracts traded, we saw increased volume across maize, soybean, sesame, and sorghum. Let's go to the price now, see how the commodities did. Price across export commodities there. You have sorghum, an increase of 14.31% at 34 naira 96 kobo increase to close at 279 naira. And then we also have ginger, also had an increase 13.74%. That's 111 naira 60 kobo to close at 923 naira 82 kobo. Let's look at others now. Soybeans is there, also in the green, 2.22%. That's 7 naira 35 kobo to close at 338 naira 77 kobo. Looking at others, maize there, which also topped in the contracts, volume of contracts here. It is increased by 7.13%. That's 16 naira 25 kobo to close at 244 naira 18 kobo. Sesame also looking good, 1.04%. That's translates to 12 naira 80 kobo, and it closed at 1,247 naira 57 kobo. Cashew nut, however, is on the flip side. It lost marginally, 0.01%. That's about 4 kobo to close at 610 naira 62 kobo. Also in that red zone, paddy rice down almost 0.5%. That's 1 naira 38 kobo to close at 330 naira 13 kobo at the close of trade on the 24th of April. Cocoa is also in the red, down 0.10%. That's 1 naira 89 kobo to close at 1,882 naira 32 kobo. For cocoa. Wheat, however, is unchanged in spite of what is happening in Ukraine and Russia, unchanged On the 24th of April, closed at 380 naira for a kilogram. All these prices are in kilograms. And always remember, according to AFEX, you can get more information from their social media. All right, so AFEX is not over yet. We have joining us here in the studio in Lagos, Adenuga Deji Adeniyi. He's a commercial manager with AFEX, and they have growing concerns within the global agriculture space and how to facilitate some of that. That's what Mr. Adeniyi is here to speak about. Good morning. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good morning.
For joining us.
Good to be here.
Good. So AFEX has its eyes on a global space now. Talking about stakeholders who contribute largely to food production are often excluded in policy and innovation. In an ideal situation, looking through the eyes of AFEX now, what does agricultural inclusivity look like? We're talking about financial inclusion, and then this is agricultural inclusion.
So in terms of agricultural inclusion and sustainability, what it means is that all the stakeholders, and when I'm saying stakeholders, I'm saying the farmers, the processors, aggregators. I'm also talking about governments themselves and even the consumers of all agricultural produce, benefiting in the agricultural resources, irrespective of their status, irrespective of their socioeconomic capacity, even gender. And there is shared prosperity, shared value. And this system, what it entails is that it ensures that at every value chain in the agricultural system, you can come in, bring your value, add your value, and also gain value. And that's the essence of inclusivity in the agricultural sector.
But some people think it will cost profitability.
Interesting question there. Well, true, there is a cost to building a sustainable system and inclusivity. But also, some of the hindrances as regards agricultural sector is the small-scale farmers. And we know that these farmers are still limited in terms of their access to land, access to quality inputs, and access to skills, technology, and of course, access to market. But it has also been proven that for every time we solve for all of those hindrances, there have been increase in terms of their productivity and output, which interestingly means profit. So for all of the time that we actually solve the problems that is acute to exclusions of the small-scale low farm, profit is gained. So I would disagree that it comes at a cost to profitability. But when there is an intentional investment in those sectors, which is one of the things at AFEX that we do, is that we have helped farmers increase in terms of their profitability. So
what's the AFEX model for this? Maybe it depends on the model that is being used.
So at AFEX, our aim is to help Nigeria feed itself and the continent, and we do this by ensuring that food production is efficient. And we also work effectively with all of these small-scale farmers. Within the network of AFEX, we have about 80,000 network of small-scale farmers that work with us, and they have access to our infrastructures and solutions. In terms of infrastructures, it's interesting to know that at AFEX we have over 150 warehouses across the 23 states in Nigeria with a holding capacity of about 300,000 metric tons. At the moment, there are calls for agri-service providers. These agri-service providers are the ones that will work with our farmers, link them with finance, inputs, crop protective services, and fertilizers. And at the end, the target is that it helps the farmers increase their production. With that increase, they bring their produce into our warehouse and be able to sell on the exchange. Because at AFEX, we issue electronic warehouse receipts. And with those receipts, their commodities become tradable instruments on the exchange, thereby giving them access to market. And on the other hand, because market is one of the challenges for AFEX, through the exchange, our trading platform, COMEX, processors are also guaranteed the volume because they are the main consumers or utilizing these commodities that the farmers are producing. So end to end, as much as we're optimizing for the farmers, we're also optimizing for the processors. And that brings in the inclusivity that we're talking about.
Where is the government and, other private sectors in this? I'm sure IFEX cannot do this alone.
Definitely. The key word is collaboration. Collaboration across board, not just with the government and with every other institutions within the agricultural space, financial institution also. And why this is important is that the role of the government, I would say, is that they need to look at how they can develop a indicator to track the progress that we have now in this ecosystem that we are trying to build. Interestingly, recently, the Federal Ministry of Budget and Planning, alongside with Ministry of Agri and Ministry of Environment, has set up a steering committee to focus on how there can be an actual food system in Nigeria. And those are kind of the policies that they need to work on, because at the end of the day, policymakers can now make informed decisions based on data that they can get from companies like KFX and other institutions, and they know which of the sectors to drive their resources.
Yeah, well, we do hope that beyond the making of the policy, we would see the implementation of it.
Thank you very much.
And we trust IFEX to be at the fore of that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us. Adenuga Adeni, Commercial Manager with IFEX.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to be here again.
Thank you. We'll take a breather now. When we come back, we head to London, and then we have the markets. All the markets still waiting. Welcome back to Watching Business Morning here on Channels Television. We head to our London studios now, and Juliana is not there, but we do have Teniola joining us. Hi, Tenny. Good morning. Good to see you. So,
good to see you too.
A lot of attention in Sudan now. We know that the UK, unlike Nigeria, has been able to get out some of its diplomats and families. Nigeria not so good. I mean, we've been talking to students there. But bring us up to date. What's going on with airlifting of the Britons from Sudan?
Right, Innie, so the UK had its first evacuation flights for its citizens yesterday afternoon. Since then, we've had 2 more flights overnight, making a total of 3 that have now landed in Cyprus. And just a few minutes ago, actually, we did hear that the first batch of evacuees in Cyprus are now on a flight back home to the UK. So in total, we believe that about 300 people have been evacuated so far. But when we consider the fact that 2,000 people had actually registered with the Foreign Office for evacuation from Sudan, this is a very low number of people evacuated so far. And keeping in mind that the 72-hour ceasefire is holding, but there have been reports of gunfire, and that window of relative safety is closing now. So there's been questions of the safety of those Britons still left behind, because they had been told to make their own way to the evacuation site without escorts. Amid fuel shortages, many are also likely to not be able to make their way to the airfield. So there's been criticism of the government responding too slowly compared to other countries, and for initially only getting diplomats out over the weekend. But yesterday we did hear from the Prime Minister saying the next 24-hour will be critical for the situation. So we do expect more flights out of Sudan in the coming hours today.
Yeah, it's critical for everyone, critical for every government, because even here in Nigeria, a lot of criticism going on. But on the other hand, we have more Britons depending on food donation. Tanya, I mean, you were in Nigeria. Before you moved there, you know that you don't get a lot of this here. So I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing when you look at it from that perspective.
Well, no, Innie, it's not really a good thing. So this report is coming from the Trussell Trust, which is a charity that donates food parcels to people. So it's saying levels of food donations are failing to keep pace because more people are now relying on those food donations. The charity says it distributed nearly 3 million food parcels over the past year, and that's its highest ever total, and a year-on-year increase of 37%. 100%. But this is particularly worrying because it's a level of need the charity says is even higher than when the UK saw during the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic. 1 in 5 people using the charity's food bank over the same period were also employed. So that means they were working but still relying on the food banks. So this just reflects the difficulties many low-income households have in affording everyday essentials amid the cost of living crisis. And the charity says with the rise, more donations are needed to cater for people to deal with record high food inflation.
Yeah, well, talking about the cost of living crisis still going on around the world and in the UK. Thank you so much, Teniola. I'll talk to you at 1:30.
See you then, Nini.
All right, so it's market time here, and Ecobank, I think she has a different kind of news for us today, but I won't let the cat out of the bag.
Yeah, good morning, yes. Well, we're just going to kick off with what happened yesterday at the equities market. You know, it did, I'm not saying I saw it now a lot as investment analyst was.
That you had yesterday.
He did predict the market was going to green in the green. So see, very much in the green, 0.49%. I was so excited.
And it's a good number to almost 0.5%.
Almost 0.5% in it.
It's
so
a
that
good
prediction
recovery.
was spot on. I said, yes, the market is back, full momentum. People are beginning to see a lot of things.
Don't be so sure. It's just one positive trade, Will.
The week is just beginning. The week is just beginning, It's just beginning.
Okay. Let's stay green.
Let's stay green. So, but interestingly, we're going to be talking commercial papers today. Do you know that more and more corporate Nigeria, that's Nigerian corporates, are beginning to raise more capital, short-term capital from commercial papers to, to run their operates, to run their day-to-day operations. And this has really skyrocketed in 2022. We saw about 737 billion naira worth of CPs raised. It's against, we saw 379 billion in 2021, and this is because of, despite high inflation.
Yeah,
so
but interesting, and I believe most of them are local investors.
Yes,
because we saw that report that there's been more than 50% drop in foreign investors. So, well, I guess Nigerians, we just have to believe in ourselves in spite of the huddle or, the bearish sentiment.
We do need the money. They do need the working capital to keep the business going. And because of high interest rates in terms of paying back these loans, it seems a bit dicey, but they can't help it.
Yeah, but is government also involved in that?
This is more of the corporates at the moment, so we're just going to be dealing with...
So the government just goes to the bond because we know that a major part of the budget is going to be funded from
the debt market. We're going to be talking Greenwich today. We're going to be speaking to, and in March, Greenwich Merchant Bank Limited issued 7.39 billion Series 1 and 4.81 billion Series 2 commercial papers under its 100 billion commercial paper issuance program, which was quoted on the FMDQ exchange. And we're going to be talking to Mr. Bayo Rotimi, he's the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, Greenwich Merchant Bank Limited, to get a sense of the impact made so far. Good morning, Mr. Byers. Good to have you on the program.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be on your program.
We said that Greenwich Merchant Bank set out, that was last month, to raise a sum of 10 billion naira, if I'm not, from the sale of commercial papers, if I'm not wrong, with the interest rates of 12.22% and 12.69%, not to mention the mouth-watering yields that will emanate from that, offered for the Series 1 and 2 papers. You must have been prepared, if this is no-brainer, for an oversubscription, isn't it? Weren't you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We were very gratified that in our maiden issuance, the market received us warmly. We had a diversified investor base, from the pension fund administrators to the asset management to individual investors to insurance companies, and we ended up with 122% subscription. So it is a validation of the market's acceptance of our story, our pedigree, and more importantly, our future strategy.
But did the issuance meet the objectives for which the papers were issued? I would like to know that.
100%, because Like you rightly said in your introduction, commercial papers are one of the instruments through which companies can access short-term working capital. So for us as a bank, the funds that we raise from the market ultimately go into creating loans and advances to our various customers. So it definitely met our objective. We set out to raise 10 billion. We ended up raising 12.2 billion. So we are encouraged, and we're looking forward to series 3 and 4, hopefully sometime in the second half of this year.
I'm curious here. Greenwich Merchant Bank Limited just got its license in 2020. That's about 2 years ago. And you mentioned the proceeds being used to support. That's the objective, is a short-term funding, your working capital, as part of your working capital management strategy. But I just want to know, is Greenwich Merchant Bank in any form of difficulty? Because you just started. It's just 2 years now. They're still trying to find their footing.
Thank you very much. Well, a bit of history. The Greenwich Group has existed for 29 years. We actually started in 1994. We're a full-service financial institution. So the Greenwich Merchant Bank, the bank, we just got a banking license 2.5 years ago. But prior to that, we operated as an investment banking firm. We had asset management, we had stockbroking, and we have some related companies, a share registration company and a trust company. All of them are leading players in the various segments. So when we chose to go out to raise additional short-term funding, has absolutely nothing to do with distress. Every institution receives funding. As a bank, we receive funding from deposit from customers or investors investing in securities that we issue. Commercial papers was a way for us to raise money at a reasonably lower cost, because you spoke about the yield between 12 and 13%. So say an average of 12.5 or 13. That is significantly below the rate of inflation. It was also below the prevailing market interest rates at the time. So it's actually a viable strategy to tap into the commercial banking market, bring down your cost of funds so that you can lend at a rate that supports economic development.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bayo Rotimi, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Greenwich Merchant Bank Limited. I should have started from the beginning, congratulations on a successful listing on the on the FMDQ, and we hope to see more of that listing going forward. Thanks so much for coming on the program.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you. Good morning.
So, just have it, more listings, more CPs, and more bonds coming in, raising capital from the debt markets. It's overwhelming now, and businesses don't have a choice. They just have to go there.
Exactly. Well, I guess it brings about more development of the market, of our capital market. So, it's all good for us.
It's all good for us.
Thank you. We'll see at 1:30 for Business Incorporated. Let's just have a couple of minutes to rush to the crypto space now and see how that market fared or is faring, because this is just this is about 8:30 a.m. That's when this number was collected. So there you see the market is back from neutral and is back on greed now, even though it's still a very sensitive greed, not very firm yet at 56. Let's just look at the prices there. Bitcoin up a bit, more than 3% at $28,388.58 thousand. Ethereum also positive, and BNB also positive, up more than 2.5%. ADA, Cardano up, also positive, about 4% up there, and then XRP. So it's a recovering market in Laddie Williams' absence. I hope he will bring that positivity when he comes back. Top gainers there, you have them, very good looking top gainers there, because they are mostly double digits there. So even this is 9%, almost 10 there. So it's a great market for the crypto space. Congratulations to Laddie Williams, wherever you are, and his guys. Hope it will be sustained, and we can get back the Bitcoin level that they hope for, that they make their money from. But anyway, that's it on the program today. Thank you so much for being a part of Business Morning. 3 days now. We have 2 days to go. We promise means to make the most of it. You don't want to miss tomorrow's Business Morning. Interesting conversations waiting for you. But do remember, 1:30, Willie Bong will be here to give you an update from the world of business. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Enjoy the rest of your day.